And now, let's join ace broadcaster Mamode Akugha as he takes us inside the Niger Delta.
Hello out there and welcome to the program. It's Inside the Niger Delta, the authentic voice of Nigeria's oil-rich region. I'm your regular host, Mamode Akugha. Our focus in today's package is on topical issues pertaining to security and development in the Niger Delta. We begin with a report on the Presidential Amnesty Program, which in the reckoning of some opinion leaders in the Niger Delta calls for an immediate review. Our second story captures the recent position of some Niger Deltans on the international oil company's reluctance to relocate their headquarters to the Niger Delta, in line with a presidential directive issued to them over 3 years ago. Moving on, we bring you a report on the state of some abandoned projects awarded by the Niger Delta Development Commission (NDDC) in Yenagoa local government area of BAYELSA State. And finally, in today's package is a report on the people's assessment of President Muhammadu Buhari's commitment to the ongoing forensic audit of the NDDC. Inside the Niger Delta, the authentic voice of Nigeria's oil-rich region, will be back in just a moment.
Niger Delta Development Commission, NDDC, determined to make a difference.
Welcome back. It's Inside the Niger Delta, the authentic voice of Nigeria's oil-rich region. Some stakeholders in the Niger Delta peace process have urged the federal government to review the Presidential Amnesty Program rather than scrap it. The appeal follows speculations that a committee set by the government to review the amnesty program has recommended its termination at a date not later than December 2020. Correspondent Ekana Miofuri has details.
On July 11, 2009, late President Umaru Yar'Adua proclaimed amnesty for Niger Delta insurgents as part of efforts to enthrone lasting peace and security in the Niger Delta. The olive branch was extended in response to a collateral damage on the Nigerian economy following sustained attacks on the country's oil and gas assets by armed combatants demanding socio-economic transformation of the backward Niger Delta region. In the unconditional pardon granted ex-combatants, they were required to undergo a process of disarmament, demobilization and reintegration into normal society. During the first phase of the Presidential Amnesty Program, there was a massive mop-up of weapons from over 20,000 ex-agitators who enlisted in the program. After a subsequent process of demobilization, the federal government in 2012 commenced the third phase of the amnesty program under the administration of President Goodluck Jonathan. No fewer than 30,000 repentant combatants were enlisted in the program to benefit from a monthly stipend of 65,000 naira while undergoing training in diverse academic fields and vocations. With the implementation of the amnesty program, the federal government was able to restore relative peace in the oil fields of the Niger Delta. Little wonder President Muhammadu Buhari has twice extended the 2015 terminal date for the program.
We have restored peace in the Niger Delta region and maintained our oil production levels. I am determined to ensure that development meant for the people of the Niger Delta get to them.
With President Buhari's avowed commitment to lasting peace and development in the Niger Delta, many stakeholders in the peace process say they are yet to come to terms with speculations about plans to terminate the amnesty program sometime during the year.
If you scrap amnesty, then you want the economy of this country to crash. Whether we like it or not, amnesty is playing a role in stabilizing oil production in this country. And of course, that was what the federal government wanted. They needed oil. They needed to develop Niger Delta. So they needed oil, so they brought amnesty to stabilize the oil production. And that amnesty has done perfectly well. The benefit of amnesty to Niger Delta compared to what the federal government is gaining, you will see that the benefit of the federal government is gaining overweigh what the region is getting.
Anybody who understands the trajectory of the problems of the Niger Delta and where we are coming from will not suggest at this time such a suggestion to the government. The reason is that we have just gone through a pandemic, or we are still in the pandemic, that have destroyed the economy. The oil sector is facing serious crisis internationally. People are not buying. Even those who are buying, they are begging them to buy. And so it is adversely affecting the economy of Nigeria. And of course, you know that the peace in the Niger Delta is hinged on the flow of oil. If once there is a crisis in that region, it adversely affects oil output in the Niger Delta. And that will obviously affect the economy of Nigeria, that is now a mono economy that relies solely on oil and gas.
While they acknowledged that the presidential amnesty program was not designed to last forever, most Niger Deltans take exception to a sudden plan to wind up the ongoing peace process at a time the Niger Delta region is faced with new emerging security challenges. Ledu Mite was chairman of the Niger Delta Technical Committee set up in September 2008 to produce a framework for lasting peace and security in the region. Worried about the prevailing state of insecurity in the Niger Delta, he advises the federal government to review the amnesty program and devise an exit strategy to forestall likely escalation of violence in the region.
There's no doubt in my mind that the idea behind the amnesty was that it was not supposed to last forever. However, I do not think that an abrupt termination without a clear exit strategy is the way out. It will create more problems than it will solve. And I think that what we in the technical committee of the Niger Delta that I chaired recommended, when we recommended the amnesty, our concept was not in the way it was implemented. I still believe that what we need to do is to review the whole process and then plan an exit strategy.
Last week, President Buhari appointed Milan Dikio, a retired Army colonel from Rivers State, to replace Professor Charles Dokubo as interim coordinator of the Presidential Amnesty Program. Professor Dokubo was suspended in February this year over allegations of corruption. He was finally dropped after several months of investigation into alleged malfeasance while he held sway as coordinator of the Amnesty Program. It is expected that under the administration of the new coordinator of the Presidential Amnesty Program, it will be reviewed and strengthened to become more impactful on the region and equally beneficial to the rest of the country.
Inside the Niger Delta.
Belema Oil Producing Limited, oil production and exploration company. Belema Oil, truly indigenous, world-class brand.
The refusal of international oil companies to relocate their head offices to the Niger Delta in violation of the federal government's directive issued over 3 years ago is giving most Niger Deltans cause for worry. Following a steady rise in unemployment rates across the Niger Delta, some civil society groups and business operators are calling on the IOCs to relocate and create jobs for their host communities in the region. Correspondent Chika Boduze tells us more.
The National Bureau of Statistics, NBS, in a recent report, ranks Nigeria's oil-producing states, including Imo, Akwa Ibom, Rivers and Delta, as states with the highest unemployment rates in the country. In its ranking, the NBS designates Imo as Nigeria's unemployment capital with 48.7% unemployment rates, while for Akwa Ibom, Rivers and Delta states, unemployment rates are put at 45.2%, 43.7% and 40.3% in that order. The jobless state of millions of Nigerians residing in the Niger Delta is in spite of the fact that the region is the melting pot of the oil sector, which accounts for over 95% of Nigeria's foreign exchange and 80% of its annual budgetary revenues. Niger Delta activist Ken Henshaw describes this development as unacceptable.
It's shocking that the 6 highest states in terms of unemployment are oil producing states. That's a major problem, and that's a clear indicator that foreign direct investment is being lost alongside a whole lot of other investments. This region has been steadily and routinely fleeced.
In the wake of the NBS report, several groups in the Niger Delta have held meetings to look at possible causes of rising unemployment rates in the region. The general submission is that capital flight from the region has been a major driver of unemployment in Nigeria's oil-rich region. Only recently, Bayelsa State Governor Doye Diri made a case for oil companies to relocate their head offices to the Niger Delta, where their exploration and production activities take place. According to Governor Diri, the relocation of oil companies to the region would boost its economy, particularly for his home state of Bayelsa.
Let me reiterate our earlier call for the oil companies to please come back to the Niger Delta and site their headquarters in the Niger Delta. Particularly for us in Bayelsa, we are even set by virtue of what the Nigerian Content Development Board is doing, by virtue of what the Bayelsa State Government is doing and will continue to do. Let me invite you to come back and expand the offices in Bayelsa. And those who don't have offices, please come and build your headquarters here in Bayelsa. That way, the issues of capital flights from where the golden egg is being laid, those complaints will go down.
After a critical consideration of the IOC's reluctance to comply with an order from Vice President Yemi Oshibajo in March 2017 to relocate their head offices to the Niger Delta, some Niger Deltans have come to the conclusion that the Vice President was merely playing to the gallery when he gave the directive.
There's no leadership without example, and it's clearly the failure of the regulatory institutions to follow suit. You cannot be regulating me and be elsewhere and expect me to be somewhere else. How do we intertwine? The NNPC in itself, who do not have any business in Abuja, will move to the Niger Delta, where their oil and gas activities, 99% is taking place. As well as the oil companies will also move in the same vein.
Over the years, the international oil companies have consistently cited insecurity as a factor preventing them from relocating their head offices to the Niger Delta. However, not a few Niger Deltans disagree that their preferred destinations in Lagos and Abuja are not immune to the many security challenges plaguing the entire country. For most business operators in the Niger Delta, the oil companies are deliberately staying away from the Niger Delta to boost the economies of other regions in the country.
Take a look at Lagos. As far back as 1991, Lagos was generating in the neighborhood of about 8 billion naira as its IGR. Today, Lagos is doing about tenfold that. Now, just oppose that with a state like Rivers State that was generating about that same IGR as far back as then, and just oppose that to what we're generating now. We're paltry between the neighborhood of 10 to 12 billion.
In spite of the adamant posture of the IOCs, there are several compelling reasons suggesting their immediate relocation to the Niger Delta. Now more than ever before, their presence is needed to heal old wounds, especially in regard to dealing with unending incidents of environmental pollution attendant on their drilling activities in the region. Moreover, it will place them in a better stead to effectively carry out their corporate social responsibility to disgruntled host communities in the region. This is without a shadow of doubt a credible solution to the crisis of underdevelopment that is currently rocking Nigeria's oil-rich Niger Delta region.
Inside the Niger Delta.
Get to know the future. The future is ITEO.
Residents of Okutukutu and their counterparts from Bahrain, both in Yenagoa local government area of Bayelsa State, have called on the Niger Delta Development Commission, NDDC, to ensure a speedy completion of some abandoned projects in their communities. Correspondent Tekena Mefo reports that the non-completion of the projects, including a bridge and water facility, has made life difficult for residents of the affected communities.
Bahrain and Polaku communities lie only few meters apart from each other at both ends of the Taylor Creek. It was to address transport and communication hiccups around several communities in Yenagoa and Kolokuma-Opokuma local government areas of Bayelsa State that the NDDC initiated a project for the construction of the Bahrain-Sabagria-Polaku roads and bridges in June 2003. The contract was awarded to Elite Construction Company to construct 3 bridges and a 6-kilometer asphaltic road at a cost of 1.8 billion naira. The contractor was said to have absconded after taking the project to about 45% completion stage.
This is a major access route to even Yenagoa main town and its environs. Because if this bridge is completed, definitely the people within this vicinity will enjoy it. It's going to bring development. Even Polaku people, at least the community will spread to this other aspect, and it will also create some job opportunities for people around. And the whole Kolokuma has this is the shortest means to Yenagoa. So it's going to help the people both economically and otherwise. We are begging on all the persons concerned, precisely NDDC, to do our best to see that this bridge is completed, because it will go a long way to help the people and the Niger Delta in general.
Also abandoned in Yenagoa local government area is a multi-million naira Okutukutu water project awarded to a traditional ruler from a neighboring community some 15 years ago. The water project is almost completed, with all necessary facilities provided to enable it function. Curiously, it has not produced a drop of water in a community that contends with severe water crisis.
We are buying water from Aboki, as in we buy 250 naira per jerry can. Then in case rain fall, as you can see for yourself now, if rain fall, that is the only time you can get water. It's only rain water that will make use of here. Then with Aboki water, this thing is not functional. If this water is functioning now, it will help so many people, and it will help save money for those that cannot afford it.
These projects were conceived and awarded by the NDDC to transform largely neglected communities in Bayelsa State, the cradle of oil and gas production in Nigeria. Regrettably, they have been abandoned after gulping huge sums paid to contractors as mobilization fees.
Actually, when the NDDC started operation, things were going on well. We started seeing projects dotting the landscape of the Niger Delta communities in the area of health, education, transport. They were everywhere, even environment in terms of refuge disposal. But all of a sudden, we begin to see a kind of abandonment of some of these projects. We need the NDDC to be effective so that monies budgeted will be seen on ground, meeting the needs of the people and bridging the gap, the needs gap.
In its quest to revamp the NDDC, the federal government has been urged to capture the abandoned Bahrain-Polaku roads and bridges construction project, as well as the Okutukutu water project, in its ongoing forensic audit of the Commission's operations.
Inside the Niger Delta. NDDC, established in the year 2000 to help develop Nigeria's Niger Delta region. After 2 decades, what is their scorecard?
The amount of money which the federal government is religiously allocating to NDDC, we would like to see the results on the ground.
They have been doing a lot in the last 19 years, but if they were doing quality projects, I'm sure that we would have seen so much on the ground.
What is the state of the NDDC project in your community? Tell us about it and we will report it. send us an email to insidethenigerdelta@gmail.com or call us on 080-920-76444. Inside the Niger Delta, the authentic voice of Nigeria's oil-rich region.
President Muhammadu Buhari has been commended for his commitment to the ongoing forensic audit of the Niger Delta Development Commission, NDDC. The commendation from some Niger Deltans is coming on the heels of the recent approval of the appointment of field forensic auditors to undertake a forensic audit of NDDC operations from its inception in 2001 to 2019. Correspondent Lovely Ofigo has more.
Minister of Niger Delta Affairs, Senator Godswill Akpabio, had submitted a memo to the President requesting appointment of field forensic auditors to carry out a forensic audit of the NDDC. The request was granted recently at the Federal Executive Council meeting with an approval of 722.3 million naira for the first batch of forensic auditors. In the first batch is Ernst & Young, an international audit firm that will operate from the headquarters of the NDDC in Port Harcourt. Following the Federal Executive Council approval, a second batch of field forensic auditors is to be engaged almost immediately. Expectedly, both batches of field forensic auditors will work closely with the lead forensic auditors appointed sometime in March this year. According to Senator Akpabio, the successful engagement of all forensic auditors signals the actual commencement of the NDDC forensic audit, which is in place to determine how the Commission spent about 5 trillion naira in statutory allocation over a period of 19 years.
Through this exercise, we'll know the quantity, the amount of monies that have gone into the region in the last 19 years, and whether the value we have received so far are commensurate with the monies that have entered into the NDDC. We thank Mr. President for not just the will, but for also undertaking to ensure the funding to make sure that this exercise comes to fruition, because it will benefit not just the Niger Delta people, but it will benefit Nigerians, and it will also give direction to a lot of agencies of government, such as the Northeast Development Commission.
Senator Akpabio, however, emphasizes that the forensic audit was not instituted to witch hunt perceived political opponents, but to retool the processes of the NDDC.
The job is not just forensic auditing alone. I know forensic audit is different from statutory audit. Forensic audit different audits statutory audit, because this one is done with a view to checking whether there were issues of misappropriation, bribery, corruption, fraud, or anything of that sort that could have militated against the success of the agency in the last 19 years. And also at the end, the involvement of Ernst & Young, the internationally and globally recognized forensic auditors, will help us to set up modalities to avoid future fraud, and then also set up governance structure that will not only move the NDDC forward, but will bring much more benefits to the people of the region.
To the dismay of most Niger Deltans, no fewer than 12,000 projects awarded by the NDDC between 2001 and 2019 had been abandoned. The people are therefore relieved that Mr. President has fulfilled his promise to salvage the NDDC.
I am appealing to the government to ensure that the forensic audit is total and return the contractors to complete the jobs. It will save all of us a lot of stress.
So many hitches have come up to stop the forensic auditing. Remember the National Assembly saga? All those things, for me, I see it as a kind of incoherence to put a comma in the forensic auditing, for the fact that Mr. President has stood his ground and said, no, this thing must go on. Still under the Ministry of the leadership, the Ministry of Akpabio. All we need to do is to supporting him.
President Muhammadu Buhari had in September last year ordered a forensic audit of the NDDC, following several complaints about massive corruption that incapacitated the Commission to deliver on its mandate. With a brand new NDDC in the offing, the people look forward to a more responsive intervention agency that would truly make a difference in their lives.
Inside the Niger Delta, Azikel Group. Oil and gas, dredging, power and air transportation. Azikel Group. Petroleum product sufficiency, energy sustainability and infrastructure development.
Well, that's the size of our package on the program for today. Inside the Niger Delta, the authentic voice of Nigeria's oil-rich region, will be back same time, same station next week. Until then, you can follow us on our social media handles showing right now on your screen. Until next week, remember to always wash your hands, maintain proper hygiene, and keep safe social distance to avoid contracting the deadly coronavirus disease. I am Mamode Akugha. Thank you so much for watching, and bye for now.